in three, two, one. Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict to Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank you all so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. We greatly appreciate you guys doing so. As always, keep your eye on addicttoathlete.org. You'll find all of our backlog podcasts, information about the team, how to become a certified addict to athlete recovery coach, and so much more. You can find all that on the website. Specifically, if you jump under there, you'll find a great assortment of recovery tips about the team, about how to get one started, but more so to have a little bit of a team behind you when stuff starts getting a little bit rough out there. As always, athletes, please continue to jump on social media. We're going to be moving some social media awareness over to a new platform here shortly to kind of condense the location, but keep an eye on our socials, and we'll have you guys download the Circles app here very shortly, and get you on the mainframe, which will help you get expand your team and your recovery support. Hey, I got a great guest in studio today. I'm excited to have Tyson Steed in here. He is a man that I bumped into at National Overdose Awareness Night, and it was kind of a cool thing because as we started chit-chatting a little bit, we started realizing how our paths have crossed in a lot of different other ways. But we kind of came together on that, evening to not just to celebrate recovery, but to also pay homage to those who have lost their battle to addiction. There's still very much a uphill battle that we have to face about this overdose issue that we've got going on here in America. But I'm excited to have Tyson here. Tyson, welcome to the podcast, brother. I'm excited to have you on here because you've got an amazing story and you've got some stuff you're doing outside of kind of your own life to promote recovery and to kind of back yourself into a spot by which I think you can be a instrument for a lot of good. Tell us a little bit about you. Welcome to the podcast, and let's get going, brother.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. So my name is Tyson Steed. I lived a fairly normal life, I'd say, growing up. Besides, my dad was never around. My biological father was never around. He's an addict. And to this day, he's still doing the same thing. Jails, institutions, it's not looking good for him. But for some reason, he feels like that's the life, that he wants to live. It's kind of a sad thing. I was raised by my mom and two older sisters. So I'm the baby of the family. I have a stepdad that came into my life at about 8 or 9 years old, and he eventually adopted me. So that's where I got the last name Steed. It was originally McKissick. I am adopted Steed. Wow. He's a great guy. He stepped in to take care of my mom, my two sisters. So my parents, growing up through my childhood, my parents both drank and used. So that was a bit of a struggle. We went through some traumatic events, and me and my sisters kind of talk about it. My mom really doesn't like to talk about it so much, and I think that's just a part that she hasn't worked through that trauma,
Right.
And I hope one day that she will decide to, hey, go put in some work, because I know it's got to be hard on her.
Absolutely.
Sure. As a single mom raising 3 kids, then getting in a relationship, then alcohol, the drugs, so that was me growing up. I think my father figure for the most part was my grandfather.
Yeah.
He got me into golfing,
Nice.
Showed me the sports. He was everything you would think of when you're like, I want that guy to show me the way.
Awesome.
He was him,
Yeah.
And the struggle, I was about 11, maybe 12 when he passed away. I don't remember the disease or what happened to him, but I remember it happened so quick, and the disease is super rare. It's like 1 in 10 million this happens to. He went from perfectly healthy to passed away in about a year. And I mean, it takes your sight, your hearing. It was just the pill to see that. It was super hard for me. And that was about the time where me and God didn't like each other, right? And I would say, and I don't think it was mutual. I think it was me just getting dark and wanting to blame something.
Yep.
He was such a pillar of the community. And I mean, you couldn't find a better guy, hands down, so that was tough for me. And that was about when it started getting dark for me. 7th, 8th grade. I got into, started drinking alcohol. I would steal it from my parents
Mhm.
and they're under their bathroom sink, you know, and
Yeah.
I wanted to fit in with those kids that wouldn't judge me. So I'd bring, you know, the little 20-ounce bottles of whatever
Makes sense.
alcoholic beverage was there.
Yep.
And we'd go before school and drink it up. And then, you know, it made everything seem a little bit less serious, you know.
Absolutely.
And at the time, I didn't realize I was just trying to escape my reality, you know, the struggles, the hurts, losing my grandpa, my family. I have a great family. You know, I had everything I needed. There were clothes, we had food, we had a place to live, we were safe, but there really wasn't an emotional connection, if that makes any
It
sense.
absolutely
Like
does.
we lived in the same house, but as far as like on a level of like the connection part, the love, the care, you know, I didn't not feel loved, but I didn't connect to anybody. I didn't know how to connect. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure of that. So emotionally, it was a little bit stressful in my household, you
Makes
know.
sense.
Arguments, fighting, that was common. I grew up with that, so I
Mhm.
think I started to use that is how I treated other people,
Yeah.
relationship wise. Growing up, I was bullied. Um, I guess I just have one of those faces that people want to bully. I don't really know.
I think it comes with the energy that we produce out there, brother, because your story is eerily similar to mine, and it you know it doesn't take much to I think have something draw the attention of a bully that just kind of like reinforces the fact that something's wrong with us, and it
Right.
it leads into bigger issues, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That was the things I just wanted to escape. You know, I wanted
Hmm.
to get away from that. At times, I don't think I really felt protected,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
and so with that, it's like, who am I? Why? You know, I already have a father that's not present. Is there something wrong with me?
Oh,
Like,
dude, it totally does, right? I mean, you're talking about some cool stuff here when you start looking at like what instigates the addiction and whatnot. And when you start getting core issue type stuff that you're accumulating and bringing on, I kind of think, you know, you're probably the same ballpark as I am, where it's this feeling of like just neglect. Like love should be there, but it doesn't seem to be happening. And when you have a very strong visual that my dad's choosing not to be in my life, I'm kind of going through this turbulence over here. I know that there's some relationship stuff, but it doesn't feel as though it's as fluid as, you know, say my friends or other people I know. It does put that into your mind. Like there must be something wrong with me. It must be my fault. That thought that we have from that little core issue of like neglect that we don't quite understand or can articulate, man, it starts building into all these other feelings and these other issues. And what happens?
absolutely. You know, it
Hmm.
goes, you get dark and you go down that hole,
Yeah.
you know, and at the time, it's, you're caught up in the school, being a cool kid, hanging out with some other
Hmm.
individuals that like you. I quickly turned into the class clown. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I was blessed with the ADD or ADHD. You know,
Yep.
I'm not sure if that's a real
Dude, I
thing,
think
but
we are cut from the
yeah,
same mold,
you
dude.
know,
Absolutely.
they said
Uh-huh.
it would go away, and I'm 40 now, and I'm still waiting
Dude, it's
for that
still,
to
yeah.
happen. So
Yep. Still happens.
yeah,
Absolutely.
um, you know, going in, so I didn't do very well at all at school. So there were classes, obviously, gym, band, things that I excelled at that I could just be top notch without even trying.
Yeah.
And then there was when I had to sit still
Oh,
and
man.
learn, and I was kicked out of class more times than I can
Yep.
remember. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't focus my attention on what was going on. And
Yeah.
so it was brutal for me, you know, and I didn't know how to communicate what was going on with me, why I couldn't learn, why I couldn't sit
100%.
down. So I
100%.
quickly turned that into trying to make everybody laugh, being the class clown. And it was tough for me, you know,
Yeah.
because I was always in the principal's office and it was always the attention I got was from the negative things I was doing. And I believe I learned to manipulate situations like that,
Brilliant, man.
you
Oh
know.
my gosh, brother, you are speaking my language. It's amazing how similar, because being the youngest, you know, in my family too, and all these kind of things. Yeah, you fly under the radar. You have to be the joker, the class clown,
Right.
because you have to have, you know, whose ever eyes cast away from what you can't do into something you can, even if it's negative. It's like, well, at least they don't know that I I suck at math, or I can't do
Right.
these, you know, this English. I don't get what a flipping verb and pronoun is. Like all this crap. But yeah, like the hands-on stuff, the band,
Yeah.
the sports and stuff, like we excel at. But the crazy thing is that no one notices back then. Not
Right.
one teacher, not one principal, whoever was like, hey, wait a second. Your behaviors are speaking. They look at behaviors as you need to conform when really behaviors are like something's up. But no one
Right.
knows. And you don't know how to articulate that because you're like, who's going to listen anyway? Right. It's like,
Right.
what do I say? How do I say it? They're just going to look at it like I'm trying to get out of this work or whatever. Dude, you're the same as me, brother,
Oh, yeah.
man. Like school was a nightmare for me too.
It was.
I
It
hear
was
you.
hell on earth. It
I
really
hear you,
was.
man.
And I felt like the odd duck. And so
Yeah.
I believe growing up, I became that individual. I was like, that's my identity. I'm
Yep.
the wild child. I'm the one that'll risk it all for nothing.
You were labeled,
Yeah.
and so you had to fulfill that role.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. I had to be that guy, you know. And so, I mean, I couldn't tell you the amount of times, you know, my mom's picking me up from school, heartbroken, and she's just like, "What's going on?" And I shut down.
And you're
I
like,
just
I
shut down.
don't know.
Yeah.
It literally,
didn't know.
I have no clue.
Right.
Mhm.
So that was tough. And so going into high school, it was I went into the drinking, then I went into the marijuana use in junior high, early in junior high, let that play out. I went into high school and I had a buddy that I'd gone to school with since about 6th grade.
Mhm.
And I went to Northridge High in Layton. He lived across the street and he was, you know, if I was the wild child, he was like the absolute terror. You know,
Yeah.
he maybe went to school a day a week and that was good for him and they were all cool with it. And I was like, man, that's the life. Dude.
That,
You
yeah.
got it.
How did you
Hey,
achieve that?
yeah, what are you doing
Mhm.
over there? And so with him and you know coming to and from his house and seeing what's going on, it quickly went from those drugs to methamphetamines.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you, I remember the first time I ever used methamphetamine was before a history class. I went over there, we did the drugs. I went back to school. I went into history, and the craziest thing was my brain wasn't everywhere. I was zoned in. I mean, I was on it like, wow, where has this been?
I swear you and I are from the exact same mold.
Yeah,
Keep going,
we're
brother.
twins. We're
Keep
just twins.
going,
We
man.
didn't
'Cause it's
realize.
the same thing. All of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, this is making sense.
Right, this is it. I'm like, wow,
And
this
you're
is
almost kind of interested. You're like,
yeah,
wow, I had no idea that they came over here on a ship or, you know, like
right.
these what pilgrims? What? Yeah, I hear you,
Yeah, I
man.
could zone in, and I didn't
Yeah.
have the voices just slowed down enough in my head to where I could hear what the teacher was saying, and I was like, "Oh man, this I feel good right now. Like these drugs can't be bad." I understand all the commercials, and I remember growing up with all those crazy
This is your brain
commercials.
on drugs,
That's
eggs in the
exactly
pan.
what I was
Mhm.
thinking, and I'm like, "But this can't be true." So then
Yeah,
I'm
man.
disbelieving, you know, my personal feelings of how I feel using this chemical to, are they lying to me? You
Well,
know,
yeah, because you're not, 'cause right then you're not out robbing or hiding in the
right.
alleys and
Yeah,
mug somebody. You're
not
like, you're
yet.
learning history.
Right. I'm
I hear
learning
you.
history. I'm in school. I'm focused. And I left. I remember, I think I had another class after that. And I finished the day and I was like, I knew what homework I had to do. I knew where, like, I
And
had,
you felt good
yeah, I
too. It
felt
wasn't,
good.
it wasn't like
Right.
you were like picking your face or anything like I hear
No.
you, man. You were like locked in. You're like, dude, is this can you I'll sidetrack here because I had that same epiphany when you finally started to understand. You're like, does everybody do this? Does everyone kind of feel this way? Like I
Right.
thought, does everyone think like
Yeah,
this?
is this normal?
Just normal? Like those kids that can do good math, that can raise their hand and answer a question. I'm like, is that what they do? Because it seems so foreign, didn't it?
It was absolutely foreign. I couldn't believe that epiphany happens. And I'm just like, wow, where have I been for the first 15 years of my life? This is where it's at, you know?
100%, man.
And that lasted about a week. And then the
Yep.
sleep deprivation came in. And then how do I get more? You know, the process of becoming that true addict, you know, because my personality is super addictive. Whatever I do, I love to do it at full speed all the time and go head first into it. So, you know, it wasn't longer until I was out burglarizing, you know, cars. It started
Yep.
with burglarizing cars or stealing checks from my mom and dad.
Yeah.
I learned how to write checks and I learned these little criminal traits that I was like, oh wow, you know, I could
Seems easy.
yeah, I could
Yeah.
write these checks and get the money. I know I'm going to get in trouble for it, but until then, I was, you know, I felt important.
Well,
I
yeah.
felt accepted.
And you don't think about the future. You think about the right now. And right now it did seem to click. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I felt great at the time.
Mhm.
And then, you know, slowly I look back on it and I just see how it went from, wow, this is great. I can listen in school and focus in school to, I'm out at 3 o'clock in the morning, robbing my neighbors, stealing from their cars,
Yeah.
stealing from my parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Plotting and scheming all the time. And it was like, wow, it went dark really quick.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't realize it in the moment either. You kind of think it's just the next thing, and that's what sucks, you guys, listeners. This is what happens when we don't identify those behaviors early. We look at those as problems and issues, and when we try to like suppress and like to a certain degree, put away. When really what we should be doing is listening to what those behaviors are saying by saying, "Hey, we need to lean in on this. We need to talk to this kid's, like school and get some stuff going. We got to think outside the box." Like, dude, back then when I was growing up, when you were growing up, no one thought like that. It was you do one way, and if it doesn't work, tough. And so you find a way that starts to work. And the thing that sucks about it is that's not what you wanted to do, but it was the kind of like at that point the only option you saw. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was it.
100%, man. I hear you.
That was it. I didn't know, I didn't get and understand the conforming aspect of it.
Mhm.
I was like, well, they just seem boring. And it doesn't seem any
Absolutely.
good. I'm not connecting with anybody. I'm not connected spiritually. I was still upset.
And I'm
with
sorry,
God,
but that's not all your fault either. Does that
Right.
make sense? Like I get it, but all in the same breath, like especially back then, man, mental health and addiction is so much easier to talk about today than it was
Right.
back then. You know this. And so
Absolutely.
no one knew how to even address it. But like we looked at all this stuff as problem kids when really all you needed was a mentor or someone to be like, hey, pump the
That's
brakes.
it.
Right?
That was it. That was huge. And so, and going into that, more of the criminal aspect, that lifestyle, and then going and getting arrested for these things and going to Farmington Bay and
See,
being in
that's where
there.
we deviate. For some reason, by God's
Right.
grace, I never got like messed with law enforcement. I never got entangled in that. What was that like when you had that first red and blue behind you and you're like, oh crap. Like
Oh, man.
what was that like?
It was,
How old were you?
this would have been in junior high. And I was, you know what? Actually, it might have been 10th grade
Okay.
as well. And we were at a friend's house. We went left school at a friend's house, and we were smoking marijuana. And her mom came home, and
Oh no.
during
Oh
this whole
yeah.
thing. And mom comes home. So as a 15-year-old individual, I'm like, oh, we gotta go. We're running. We're out now. So the mom thinks, oh, someone broke into my house. What's going on? Because the daughter at the time ran with us. So if she just
It
sees
can't be my daughter.
these 8
Uh-huh.
kids scram from your
Uh-huh.
home, you're probably going to call the cops. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah.
Not that what we were doing was okay either way, but we took off. And so, all of a sudden there's cops everywhere. This is down a little town in South Weaver.
Not a
out-
lot for them
yeah,
to be doing. So they're
not a
like,
lot.
game's
Oh,
on. Let's
this
go.
was it.
Yep.
Yeah. So they rounded everybody up, and I believe I got caught with some marijuana in a pipe and taken to Farmington Bay. And at that time, they actually let my mom just come pick me up.
Yeah.
And that was one of those days where I knew I broke her heart. I could
All
see
the other
that
things kind of like stung,
Yeah,
but this
yeah.
one you felt
this
deeper.
was like when
Yeah.
she's walking in and I'm handcuffed in a cell, and she looks in the window and she's like, you could just see like, oh man, that was,
Yeah.
your only boy,
Yeah.
and I could see the heartbreak.
She doesn't
So
know what to do.
Right.
She's like, what's going
she's
on?
at a
I
loss.
hear
She's
ya.
got a lot of life going on as well for
Yeah.
herself and with my other 2 sisters. And so I think that's where I really saw like, oh man, this isn't good. There's
Mhm.
something going on here. And again, I didn't know how to deal with it then either. So it
Yeah.
became, now I had to sneak away and run away to use these drugs.
You
and
had
the
to be better.
chemicals.
You
Right.
probably got better because
Right.
you knew where you made the mistake last time. So you're
Right.
like, not again.
Not doing
I'll
that
be
again.
more aware, which
Yeah.
makes you, yeah.
So
Mhm.
now I have to look at where can I hide the drugs? I got to be smarter.
Yeah.
It wasn't of like,
You got to really
well,
put in
maybe
the work.
why am I using the drugs?
Yep.
That's the problem. I wasn't worried about that because it wasn't something that I was going to change, because that escape was still real.
Well, brother, you were
know?
still doing the same thing. You were self-medicating. I mean, I hate to say it out there, but it works for what void we have, So like the methamphetamine, it's the same thing with me. It was like, oh my gosh, I can focus. I'm a better employee. I'm a better, like student. All that stuff. You were self-medicating. You didn't know. And no one was going to take you to the doctor and be like, if something's up with him. They'd be like,
Yeah.
we give him more sleep, have him,
Yeah.
you give him some sleep hygiene. It's crazy. So it makes perfect sense. Like, I can't lose this. And I think sometimes we even forget that even in this day and age, that the substances you're using mimic things that are going on in your life. So if you're using amphetamine, stuff like that, then chances are you probably got some ADHD.
Right.
If you're using alcohol and smoking weed, there's probably chances you got some decent depression going on. Something doesn't feel right. Like you've got some issues. If you're taking the benzos and you're, anti-anxiety medications, you have experienced some heavy trauma. You don't want to feel
Right.
good. You don't want to feel bad. You want to feel numb. So you look at like abuse and sexual abuse, things of that nature. And so you start looking at like what people are using. It kind of gives you a small window to start figuring out what's going on.
Right.
You didn't know that, but I don't blame you. I did the same thing. I'm like, I've got to hide it better. I got to be more proactive with like foreshadowing what could happen. And all that does is make us better at using.
That's it.
Right? Better addicts, right?
Yeah, that's all it did. And it became to the point where mom was like, "Hey, you got to see a therapist. We need to get you some help."
How
I
old were you
believe that
then? Because
stigma
that's probably
about,
scary. You're like,
about 14, 15.
like a therapist.
Yeah,
What?
you need to see, you need to get some treatment. And it had been on and off because I was super rambunctious. I was wilding out. I was, punching the walls. I was breaking stuff. I couldn't control my emotions. I didn't know how to communicate my emotions at all.
Yeah.
And so that came out in a destructive way,
Had to.
and
Your
so going to
behaviors.
seeing these therapists, which it was like typical, right? I go see a 50-year-old guy and we just stare at each other. And he's like, "So what do you want to do?" And it's like, I'm not saying nothing to you.
Like,
I don't
who
know
are you?
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah,
I
man.
couldn't connect to an individual I didn't know,
Absolutely.
let alone tell him the deep, dark secrets or whatever's bothering me.
And for a kid already that doesn't know how to do relationships, a complete stranger, like twice, 3 times your age,
Right.
what?
How do we connect?
Never.
Yeah. How do we, who are you? And so,
Absolutely.
man, they sure wasted a lot of money on those,
Yeah.
and I understand that they were just trying to help because they didn't know what to do. They were at a loss.
Yeah,
I think we all were really.
for
And
sure.
so, and that's where it became like, I don't want anything to do with that. I just need to get better at hiding my using
Yeah.
and doing, and
I'll take care of me.
there you go. So I wanted to
Mhm.
start, hey, look at me, look at my left hand when my right hand's doing whatever. And that
Yep.
became living the two lifestyles. I wanted to show them I was doing things, I was doing better, but really I was just trying to wait longer to use and in between uses. And that lasted for maybe a couple months. And then it was like, I'm just
Too
me,
much
and
work, huh?
too
Like,
much
yep,
work that I'm not
accept
willing
it.
to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, getting older, and it was in and out of Farmington Bay, doing the O&A program, doing Mill Creek, which is like juvenile prison with an actual parole board,
Yeah.
going to Wilderness,
You went to Wilderness.
I did Wilderness.
What
I was
program?
in Wilderness when
crazy.
9/11 happened.
No kidding.
Yeah, I had no clue. They said the Twin Towers were hit, and I was like, what is that?
You're like, what is that?
I had no clue.
Which one did you go to?
It was in Loa, Utah. I don't remember. It was at
It's like a Red Rock or like Anasazi or something. Like that.
It was the state ran one.
Oh.
It wasn't private.
Oh.
It was state ran. Yeah, I
It's-
went from jail from Farmington Bay out there.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was brutal. And what was wild is that
I love it.
I loved being out there.
Hell yeah. And that's why, right?
loved it.
Because all of a sudden you're doing things with your hands again.
There it is.
Like, if I gave you the equipment, do you think you could still do a fire right now?
bow drill. I
Bow
bet I
drill?
could.
Yes.
I did that when I got home.
I love
still
it.
did that.
I
Yeah.
love it. When I meet people that have done wilderness, the first thing I ask them is, could you still build a fire? Could
Oh.
you still? And the answer is always, yeah, it might take me a minute, but I could do it.
I could do
That in and of itself is one of the coolest things, because it's like, wait a minute, you start realizing I'm a creator.
Right.
I can take these things and create this fire. So that game Minecraft, right? Like, you keep building onto stuff. You're like, I can do this. So you probably thrived to a certain degree there because you were using your hands. You were busy. You were, dare we say, you were surviving.
Right.
Right.
And I really
That's
enjoyed
incredible.
it. I really enjoyed it out there. I think that spiritual connection in the wilderness is unreal. It's unmatched when you're not seeing the city, the cars, the noise.
Distractions.
Yeah, it's a
gone.
little different when you're in a sleeping bag and you hear coyotes.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, oh, this is real.
What time of
This
year
is
did you
serious.
go?
It was, I think I left in September. So I
So it
would have went
started
in
getting
July.
cold then.
It was about 49 days I was out there.
So it started getting a little chilly out there too then.
Oh, it was
yeah,
cold.
see?
Yeah, nighttime was freezing. It
Ooh.
was freezing cold. So
Man.
it was an experience. And I remember feeling like I was doing something with my life then,
Yeah.
and I came back and I mean, I was in shape because you know how they go through the impact, they shrink
Oh,
your
yeah.
stomach, then you eat. And if somebody, whoever's chosen doesn't bust the fire, you eat cold.
You're eating cold food.
I mean, whatever, macaroni and cheese, it's cold. And
Which some
that's-
people would look at as being super harsh and punitive.
Right.
But what is the principle behind that?
Right.
It's like, dude, if you want this, you've got to do it.
and you got to work as a team.
And
gotta
it's
work.
hard. I know it's hard. when you want to rescue somebody or like, let me show you how this, but like those are natural consequences. And if you get the right location, the right group of people, the right counselors and therapists and field mentors and stuff, it can be a great experience.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what happened to you. You're like, wow, coming back though, brother, there's got to be a little bit of adjustment because you're coming from such scarcity, but that scarcity to you turned into abundance. You're like, I can, even though I have this small amount of whatever, to me, it's big. Coming back, you can change your environment while you're down there, but like when you're coming back to the same environment, what happened?
I think it was overwhelming. I think getting out of there and being focused and having that connection to the fast-paced life of reality, back into high school, right in the mix, right in the middle of the year, it was tough, and it felt defeating.
They pull you out of the ocean, put you on the island, and take you up the island, drop you back in.
That's it. And life doesn't stop for you. No. And that haunted me all the way through till I was, 36 and getting out of prison for the last time and realizing, man, I am so lost out here.
Yeah.
Life is so quick. I've always wanted to make up that lost time.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought I was that individual that could somehow, make up 17, 18 years of incarceration in the first 6 months of my release. And every single time that led me back to using because I didn't feel like I was enough. I wasn't accomplishing enough in the amount of time and the expectations I set. They're unreal for anybody that's unreal.
Absolutely.
And so
that last time you went, what happened? Like, what was it again? Drug related?
Yeah, it was the seventh. I'll tell you, it was wild. The seventh time going back to prison, third time in the state, second time in the state. Sorry. What had got me there was a high-speed chase started it. I had a parole warrant because I moved out of my house without telling him. So he put a board warrant out. He didn't think much of it.
Right.
And he was like, hey, he left a message. Hey, Tyson, you got a board warrant. You got to deal with this.
Yeah.
And I'd reached out. I'm like, so does that mean like if I turn myself into you, can we figure something out and get some help? And he was like, no, you got to go back to prison and see the board. It's not an option anymore. So
gut check.
So from there, right, as losing everything, I'm already burning bridges. I'm knee deep in addiction.
You're thinking standard issue stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I'd been out of prison. Oh man, maybe 6-7 months, and then it was just crumbling so fast. My life was just crumbling at that point. And, I had bought this car that was like my only possession I had kept on to.
Yep.
So, as soon as I saw him trying to make a traffic stop for me, I was like, nah, this ain't it.
Like, I'm not
hit the gas and this and that. And, luckily I didn't kill anybody or myself. That's the true blessing in that. And that was just the beginning. I actually got in 4 more high-speed chases. And I like to think of myself as a NASCAR driver, but in reality, they know who I was. They knew that they would just call it off because they could get me at another time.
Right.
And so, at that point in time, I'll be honest, that was probably the most like depressed and confused and hurt and every bad emotion at that time, where I knew getting into these high-speed chases, I had accepted if I died, at least it would be over.
Yeah.
I'm too big of a coward to kill myself. I've had those thoughts since a young age, And that was, it's such a real thing to end it all and to have to think it through. But I knew like, hey, if I accidentally roll this car or do this getting away, I would rather die than go back to prison for the 7th time. I felt like the 7-time loser,
For sure.
And so, that was probably the darkest I've ever been, where I was in a super dark, using meth, injecting drugs. And I mean, I've never been as dark in my mind mentally as I was at that time. And what's wild is I get on a phone. I'm calling 2 of my friends that worked at a rehab or a institution up north. And I'm like, hey, I need to go to the receiving center. I've lost everything. I'm done. I'm tapping out. I got no drugs left. This is it.
Yeah.
I need to get help before I die, and then I'll go to prison. I'm okay with that. I've accepted that, and I get off, and it wasn't a phone call. It was text. I didn't have enough money for a phone. Who am I kidding? It was Wi-Fi. And, but I send those messages, and, one of them responds, hey, all right, I'll come get you. Where are you at? And probably 2 minutes after that, I hear the screeching of cars.
Oh
It
yeah.
was getting
I know
serious.
who's coming.
I could hear the hell. They had two
Yeah.
helicopters out. Like it was serious. And I looked at my buddy and he was like, run, and it was this big, extravagant. The cops came in. You had the feds, you had the U.S. Marshals, Weber County, every county that you could
It
imagine.
was all hands on deck.
They had blocked for like a mile and a half all the intersections with cars, the freeway entrances, just because of the fact of the risk factor of
Right.
flight risk.
Right.
And I mean, they tore this trap house up. Everyone was outside they had like cats and dogs and kennels in this house that were out. They looked like they'd been arrested. Like it was
Dude.
it was surreal. And
Yeah, it's like, what'd you get us into,
dude,
man?
what's going
Yeah.
on? And then here I am. I come out last, and they put me face the fence, and I just can see the helicopters. I see the cars. I see guys in all black running around with guns, and I remember looking at the head U.S. Marshal, and he was like, Tyson, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? I said, all this for a dirty UA and leaving an address, huh? And he was like, dude, he just said, charge him with everything.
Wow.
And it was,
dang, man.
There's a little more to it when they actually drove me out of the upstairs neighbor's apartment that's connected to the home.
Mm-hmm.
We had some words.
Yeah.
I had a marijuana cigarette. That was the last thing I had. And I remember just seeing the lasers on my chest, and they're yelling commands, and we're really having some words back and forth, and I'll promise you none of it was good.
Oh, I can imagine.
And,
yeah.
And that was, I would say that incident was the darkest I've ever been in my life, because I was hoping that they would just shoot me and I could be done with it. And I mean, they're yelling commands, this and that. And I go into my pocket for a lighter, which is the one thing they absolutely had the green light. I promise you that.
Dude, yeah.
And I pull the lighter out, and they're just like,
you got a guy with an itchy trigger finger. You're gone.
Oh,
yeah.
I was with, I know there's a God.
Yeah.
And that's, my testimony. I know that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I lit that marijuana cigarette, and then I was like, all right, I'm done. This is it. And so then we had some more words I'm walking down the stairs with my hands behind my back and this and that. And so it was, that was like, hey, I never want to feel like this again. That was it. I knew if I made it through that, then there's a reason I'm here. This is my story, and I have to live it. I have to own that. And I remember going to Weber County Jail with one of the marshals and AP&P agents. And I just remember saying, hey, I really appreciate you not shooting me. And they were like, Tyson, we really appreciate you for not making us shoot you. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to go home with
a whole other side of that.
Yeah. And I didn't ever look at their side. I always looked at what's, my greed. It's all about me.
Yeah.
It's only about me. And so that was one of those eye openers, and so that would have been the last time I went to Weber County Jail for about a week. That earthquake that had happened a couple of years ago was that time.
Oh, really?
And I slept through the whole thing. Had no idea.
Yeah, man.
Went out to prison.
Yeah.
Fought down the charge. They gave me a really good plea bargain on that. They only charged me with one of the high-speed chases. I told them, give me credit for time served, case closed. So the Board of Pardons couldn't give me 2 years that I should have got.
Yeah.
And they just gave me a violation. I think I did 4 or 5 months. I got out. And I mean, that was the start of the change.
Man, brother, I look at you just running and running and running, right? Like that's what you were good for. Like you were running, and you are running away from all the problems, all the consequences, all the accountability. But really, if you flip the script, you were running towards that end. Does that make sense? Some people say, oh, you're running away from your problems. Yes and no, because you ran right into your solution, which is kind of an interesting thing. People say that about addict to athlete all the time. They're like, oh, you're cross addicting them. Like, I'd much rather have someone cross addict with running than with heroin, right? I mean, come on, don't be dumb.
Right.
But there's balance there. But I look at it as a whole thing where, let's just say, like you were running an ultra marathon of life, right?
Right.
And then you got to that end, and that end became a new beginning.
Absolutely.
So tell me what happened after. Like, I mean, how did you hold on to this, I guess, new awareness that like, I don't ever want that to happen again. So much so that you decided to plot a new course, because that couldn't have been easy.
No, it absolutely was not easy. Getting there back to the state prison with nothing, no one, I didn't even, materials were like my lifeline.
Yeah.
That's what identified me as, having things and being important or whatever like
Yeah.
that. So losing all of that again, losing everybody, relationships were burned. I mean, I don't know if there was a single person I didn't burn, not just from stealing or monetarily, but relationship wise,
Relationship
hurtful,
wise. Absolutely.
being not the best individual to be around. And so I knew getting in there, I slept for a few days. And the first phone call that I made was to my sponsor.
Hmm.
And I was like, and he answered that phone, and I broke down in tears and I was like, bro, I love you. Thanks for answering this call. Cause at the time, COVID was rampant and it was going on. So they gave us 10-minute free calls
Yeah.
to where we could get a hold. Other than that, I wouldn't have had any way to get a hold of anybody. I didn't have any
Jeez.
money on my books. So,
Yeah, man.
that became understanding he still loved me when I just destroyed these relationships and everything, that was in my path, the destructive nature.
Yeah.
Knowing that really made me feel like there's something in these recovery meetings or these people that either they're just as messed up as I am,
Yeah.
or they're genuinely good people. And either
Yeah.
way, I like them, right?
Either way, either way, they fit
Either
my
one of
bill.
those options, you're my people. And
Absolutely.
so I really, really worked on that, worked through some things with him. I
Really.
actually did my step 2 while incarcerated because I knew I wanted to continue progressing.
Right.
And I like to talk about doing good and talk about this and have plans, but I don't actually put the work in. So that's where I was failing.
Right.
Playing sober softball at Wasatch and Sandy and West Valley, that truly sparked these relationships with individuals who had changed their lives, who
Yeah.
had done exactly what I'd done, but they had just changed.
Yeah.
And so keeping those connections. And when it came my time to see the board, I believe somebody, I think it was my sponsor, I'm pretty sure it was my sponsor, put something on my Facebook. Hey, Tyson's going to see the board. Any positive influences, please write a character
Yeah.
reference or say some things. Let's try and get him some help. And when I went into my board hearing, they were like, hey, we got an overwhelming amount of letters from you. They're like, we didn't read them all. It was like 17, 18 letters from different in emails.
Wow.
And they were like, so we're not really sure what's going on, but either you're really loved or you're really manipulative. And I was like, well, I know I'm really manipulative.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, tread
But I
lightly.
don't think you were expecting 17,
No,
right?
I was expecting like honestly maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Maybe my sponsor and a friend in recovery.
Yeah.
But everybody from my softball team, from the 12-step rooms, I mean, that overwhelming sense of like I mattered
Yeah.
was finally set in. Feeling that unconditional love from individuals I didn't know very well.
Absolutely.
That is what started who I am today.
It feels weird too, huh? Because you're like, what is going on? Like this authentic relationships. It's like they don't care who you are, what you have, or what you can do for them. It's just because you are who you are.
Right.
When you first experience that, it's kind of like it's almost like you really like,
Yeah.
do I dare trust this?
Right.
Because it seems so foreign, which is so weird. As a basic human need, this desire to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood. And when you have those 3 things together, beautiful things can happen. So I can imagine for you, it's like, this is really weird. This seems
Yeah,
foreign.
this is odd. It's really
Yeah.
odd. But I remember, maybe I need to try something new because my way has always been wrong. My will is always going to lead me back to prison because I'm just a man of the flesh.
Yeah. It's the way it goes.
It's the way it goes. It's the way
Mhm.
my brain was trained and abused growing
Yeah.
up with drugs and all those things and trauma and whatnot. So I do remember getting out of the Utah State Prison. And I told my sponsor at the time, I said, dude, you know what? I just want to go up to that Draper Temple and look at it because I've been in the prison yard looking at that thing for
Been seeing it,
years and
yeah.
months every time I come here.
Mhm.
And I always say I want to go look at it from up there down here.
Beautiful.
And we went up there in the gardens, and it was June 30th. The day I was released, it was my mom's birthday. We went up there, and I mean, the garden was full bloom. I couldn't believe how cool it was to see,
Yeah,
like,
man.
hey, now you're looking at your past. Now move on with life,
Beautiful.
And so doing that, the wildest part is, so I went back, I went home, I moved in with my sponsor. He allowed me to stay there until we could get me into treatment because I
Mhm.
had an actual one of my good friends. She wrote up a case management plan, and gave it to the board as well. So I
Nice.
was like, I'm not just coming, like I have a plan.
I'm doing
I'm
this.
going
The
to treatment.
blueprint. Yeah.
I'm going to, do all these things. And I said, I'm really going to do them, And I remember telling that board member, this is the last time you'll ever see me. I promise you that. And
Brilliant.
they were
Yeah.
like, well, I'll hold you to it. Every bit of what
Yeah.
you said, I will hold you to it. And I was like, agreed. And so, I go in, I go to,
Yeah.
with him. The first job I got just to earn some money to have some things. I had $0 when I got out, was doing dishes at a little restaurant up in South Ogden.
Nice.
And I'd always told myself, I'll never work in food. I'll never do that. I'm above that. But that was my pride and my ego.
Absolutely.
And so there I am washing dishes under the table for $10 an hour. And I did that for, 2 weeks. I saved up. I got a phone. I got some things, some new clothes, things I needed to
You
go
earned
into
it.
treatment.
Yeah.
And it was hard going into treatment after 2
Yeah.
weeks of freedom and eating some good food.
Uh-huh.
Then going into a treatment facility where you don't have a phone, you can't vape, you can't smoke. The food is super clean.
Yeah.
No sugars,
Yeah.
not very many meats. And I was like, oh man, I don't know.
You're like, what is
Here
this?
we go.
Yeah.
Is this treatment or is this a
Insult
hell?
to injury. Yeah.
So I went in there and I realized I was really good at self-sabotaging. I'm a master self-sabotager.
Yeah, brother.
I could screw anything up, and
Uh-huh.
and I tried it then. I tried it in treatment, I had gotten in an altercation and
Yeah.
I had snapped on someone, and I realized, and with that individual is one of my best friends today,
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine how that works.
Oh yeah. I hear it.
I was ready to leave about 10 times. I was like, what am I doing? I'm a runner. Let's go.
Let's
But
go.
I knew that I had promised myself that I would stop lying to myself.
Beautiful.
So leaving that treatment center would start that again. And I knew I wouldn't stop.
Absolutely.
Once I start lying,
Yeah.
that's all I can do. And so I stayed there. I hung in. Luckily, when it was my time to leave, he was like, hey, I called everybody I knew. I had no options. I wasn't allowed to go home. They were like, nope, we're tired of the cops chasing you here. We're done with it, dude. You gotta become self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And I got angry at first hearing that, right?
Yeah.
No, you can't come back here because we're not enabling you anymore.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, well, you're my parents. This is your job,
Yeah.
But at a 36-year-old male, that's actually not their job. It hasn't been their job in
Absolutely.
a long time. And they absolutely played their part of enabling me,
Mhm.
and taking a look at why I wasn't allowed to go there was like, okay, I got some things to fix.
Yeah,
This is part of my journey. So I was like, hey, I need to go to sober living if I can.
Yeah.
How do I make this work? And he was like, all right, we'll set it up. So that was the journey, right? I started in their sober living. I actually stayed for about 18 months. I completed parole there. But the biggest thing was I was self-sufficient.
You started feeling it.
Paying for my rent, working a job, doing everything for myself. Like I didn't need the state or parole office or them to help me.
You created it yourself.
And I did have
Yeah.
some huge resources like Voc Rehab. They helped
Yeah.
me a ton. Pater funds helped me a ton, helped me get into treatment. So I really had some blessings that were like, we're going to help you as long as you continue to put in
And
work.
you had to trust that help would be there, that you
Right.
would, you know what I'm saying? Like they had to follow through, because if they hadn't or wouldn't have, that has started the whole thing over too. So, I mean, you opened your mind and your heart into receiving the help. Asking for it was incredibly difficult. I know that.
Absolutely.
So man, once those things start falling into place, you're like, wait a minute, I got some momentum here.
Right.
Yeah.
This is it. And I was like, this is me. I started going back to my recovery meetings. I started being a
Nice.
vocal individual who was like, hey, we can do this. Like we can. I knew I couldn't.
Yeah.
I've tried it. I
I
cannot,
can do this.
but we definitely can. And I had
Beautiful.
to believe in that. I had to, even the individuals you don't vibe with and connect with, they
Mhm.
still want what's best for you, I believe,
Yeah.
So that was a huge part of it. Normally I'm around, convicts and gangbangers, and it's a matter of like, if you don't have anything for us, well, we don't have anything for you. So that was kind of the mentality I've always had. But being able to get out there and into that, and I mean, I dove in head first, right?
Right.
Because I know how to do things. I do it big. I go for it all the
Exactly.
way.
You're going to jump in.
Yeah. So I did
Yeah.
that, and
Flip the script.
man, what a blessing! What a blessing that was. That changed my
Absolutely.
entire existence of who I am.
Well, there's a sense of purpose, man. You're like, okay, so this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's the same thing when you get back to the basics of like life and functioning and being able to be self-reliant. That whole concept of you busting the fire, man. I mean, you took sticks and string and created fire. It's the same thing. It's like you, with even the smallest amount of success and momentum, you were able to capitalize on that. And I say this all the time. If I said, all right, Tyson, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go out and make your life as miserable as possible, could you do it? All of us are like, yeah, man, I could do it in 2.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah. But if I say, hey, I want you to go out and make your life as amazing as possible in 5 minutes, people are like, I don't know what I would do. Those are the same principles, man. It's the same thing, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be something monumental. It could be opening a door for somebody. It could be saying hello to somebody that's struggling. It could be anything, but we don't look at it in those terms. The same principles apply. When you flip the script from someone who I say is a world-class amazing addict to become a world-class amazing individual in recovery, there's nothing stopping you because you know how to create and produce out of nothing. Does that make sense? So you can create your success and you can create your failure. You are the creator of this. I love what you're saying. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this Ashley Michelle project, because I bumped into you guys at the softball tournament and I'm like, just watching the cohesiveness. You guys even went through a little bit of an emotional, turbulent little experience. And I'm like, that's a little strange. But you held your heads high, and I'm thinking, all right, this is who they really are. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was kind of a cool thing to see how you guys navigated an interesting little like accusation that was, just I think upset because you won and moved on and they didn't.
Right.
But what I saw was your team rallying, like, hey, well, we're not gonna focus on the bad. We're leaning into this, and you guys did really well.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about this Ashley Michelle project, because it really is intriguing to me.
Oh, it's amazing. It's such a cool project of what we have going on. So let me rewind back to the last text I sent prior to the U.S. Marshals and everybody kicking in the door and grabbing me. It was to Ashley, my significant other, my soon-to-be wife. She was working at that institution, and she was the one that was like, all right, let's get you some help. So then I ghosted her, and she kept wondering where I'd been. And she saw me on the jail rosters and such, and going to prison and whatnot. And then when I got out, I still got some help from that institution. With like bus pass, they helped me with my pater funds and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so we reconnected, and about 4 to 6 months later, we started playing softball together and hanging out. And then I must have been just the man of her dreams. She just said, well,
like,
what's up? Are we ever going to date or what? And I was like,
funny. Man, I like it.
I had got to the point in my life where I was like, I'm going to fix me so that I can be fit for someone else.
Become one with yourself before someone else. Yeah.
And then here I was. And then my higher power was like, here you go. Let me throw this, the most amazing woman that you could have in your life. Like I couldn't draw a picture better myself of who she is inside and out.
Yeah.
I mean, the most pure, genuine, sincere woman I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Like we're complete opposites.
Yeah.
We
Again,
are
same old. My wife, the same thing. I'm like someone who's never experienced anything in the addiction world to hanging out with me. I'm like, what? Are you sure? Yeah. And 25 years later, still going. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so we link up, we get together. And we were together for about 1.5 years, I want to say. So I think that was our third softball tournament we just held.
Mm-hmm.
And her mom, Kelly Wareham, she's the founder of the Ashley Michelle Project. Both of her daughters, Michelle, she goes by Brooke. So it's Brooke Wareham, but her first name is Michelle. So Ashley Michelle are the two daughters.
Yeah.
And they've both been in and out of treatment, I believe about 16, 17 times.
Wow.
Like mom's been through the ringer.
Yeah.
Mom's the one of the family that's not addictive, not an addict. And she's just
trying to wrap her head around what's going on.
Right. Like it's been overwhelming for the last, 20 years for her. So she had an idea. She came to me and Ashley about it and was like, this is what I want to do. And at the time we were like, well, that sounds grand and amazing, but none of us know how to run a nonprofit, let alone where do we go from here? So, but we sat down and we came up with some ideas and exactly what we wanted to do and how we could help the community and who's not already doing this.
Beautiful.
And so eventually we founded the Ashley Michelle Project, and
that's awesome.
Our goal is, what we really want to do is get transitional living for men and women who put the work in, complete a treatment anywhere, and they'll be referred to us. That's our end all goal, is to have these transitional livings where we have employers who will work with them with or without a record. food, hygiene, clothes,
Life skills,
all these
man.
things
Yeah.
that we have, and we're preparing for these women and these men. And we are starting with the house for women first.
Yeah.
We notice there's a huge lack of that up in Davis County.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we really want to get our foot in that. And so,
Absolutely.
um, which the beautiful thing of this is along the way, we knew we couldn't just save up money for that. Like we want to
Uh-huh.
get in the community, we want to help, we want to do these things. So, I mean, there's so many things we've done. We do tons of clothes drives,
Beautiful.
anything we can. We have what's called a night of beauty where we'll get about 10 to 15 addicts from different treatment centers and we take
Mhm.
them to a beauty salon, and we have individuals, which some of them are in recovery, and they
Awesome,
get a
man.
cleanup, they get makeovers, haircuts, color, dyes, they get all of it. They get, because we feel, well, we know
Mhm.
the importance of feeling good
Oh
about
my
yourself
gosh, yeah.
is huge for
It's
me. For me
huge.
personally, that is
Yeah.
huge, and I know it's huge. And so, when a man or woman can look in the mirror and be like, "Wow, look at you! You look good,"
Yeah.
that's that positive mindset, and it does go a long ways. And
The social
it's
detox,
freaking
man. Yeah.
magic. It
Yeah.
is
You
magic.
give someone that gift. I remember as a therapist working with so many people, and I remember this guy coming into my group once, and he had these crazy dreads, amazing, but like crazy. And he was talking about how when he went to his daughter's school, he was getting the side eye. And I'm like, dude, I would give you the side eye.
Right.
And I'm like, we'll see how emotionally strong he is. And I'm like, I wouldn't trust you walking down any school, man. I mean, look at you. And he got all pissed. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man, but like that's what people are gonna think immediately. I
Right.
said, you ride the bus here. How many times have you approached for someone wanting to buy something from you? Like, hey, you got something, right? I'm like, it probably happens a lot. He's like, okay, a couple times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you really want to change, like change.
Right.
The next day he came in and I thought it was a new guy. Like he'd cut him off. He looked sharp. And I'm like, holy crud. It blew me away. That wasn't the goal. It wasn't like
Right. Right.
but I wanted to say, like, look at what happens when you look good on the outside because you put in the effort, you feel good on the inside. And it's like I get that it was a part of you that you enjoyed, but look at it now. And he's like, I get what you're saying. He's like
Right.
this, so I can totally like support. That's a beautiful thing. I love the fact that even you said Ashley Michelle project, is anyone else doing that? Shoot, man, even if they were, you have a different knack. You have a
Right.
different take. It's it's you guys. That's when we first started Addict to Athlete in 2011, man. No one else was doing this. And in fact, we got hit hard by the 12-step community because they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, hey, we're not a replacement. We're just an
Right.
addition to.
Right.
And then other, like athletic groups and stuff started popping up after us. And I thought that is awesome. And we had a few people on the team that was like, they're stealing our idea. I'm like, you guys, there's enough to go
Yeah,
around.
we're
We
helping
need
people.
the help. Like we are all on the same team here. And so I love the fact that somehow, I don't know what's happened in the water in Utah, but we have so many grassroots level programs like the Ashley Michelle Project, Addict to
Absolutely.
Athlete, and all these other ones that because people want to give back. This is not happening in other states, man.
That's true.
It is just not.
You're
So I
absolutely
love
right.
the fact that Ashley and Michelle's mother, who's never had an addiction, wanted to learn everything she could about it to the point where she's like, this is what we need.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man. And you're a
Wanna
part
give
of it
back.
too.
Yeah. Want to give back. We want to help others.
I love it. So when I saw you guys at the softball tournament and when I was watching kind of the teams that go on are the teams that are cohesive. They're the one, and I think it has obviously some stuff to do with skill, but it's like just the way you guys. I was watching the last game. I was watching it, and I'm like, just the way everyone knew where everyone was. Like, it's like Stockton to Malone, right? Like, you just know where your people are.
Right.
That's the same thing in recovery, right? Like, right now, if you bump into something that's kind of hard, you can call any one of those guys, and they'd be like,
Absolutely.
Johnny on the spot, we got this.
No question.
How cool does that have now that you've assembled what I call like the home team, right? The home court advantage. You've got Ashley, you've got, the team, you've got coworkers, you've got sponsors, now you've got Addict to Athlete. I mean, you're creating and building your team. What's that like versus what it was?
Oh man, connection, right? It's the opposite of addiction.
It's a beautiful thing.
And I was so afraid of having any type of connection before because I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I didn't want to connect. I didn't want to let people down. I didn't
Do you
want to
remember
let
that?
myself down.
Who asked you that? Because I remember my first time in therapy, I was an adult. And the therapist, I told my whole story because, I mean, stuff was rocky, man. Like I was sober, but living an addict lifestyle. Right? I wasn't using, but I had everything else going on. And my wife Marissa, when we were dating, she's like, "You need some help." So I went to therapy. My dude's name was Arlen. Like, that's my therapist. And he's a BYU student. I didn't know this, but he's a BYU student. So I'm like, "How much do you really know?" So I tell him everything. And he says, "Blue, I think I know the problem." I'm like, "Oh, really? Do you, Dr. Phil? You know the problem?"
Yeah.
And he says, "You have no idea who you are." And dude, that pissed me off because I'm like, that's a rhetorical question. No one can answer that. And I left. I got up and left. I gave him the good day, sir. Right. So I go back to Marissa's house. We were dating at the time. And she's like, "How did therapy go?" And I'm like, "I'm done." She's like, "One session?" I'm like, "Dude was good. Right. I'm done." And she's like, "No way." And so she starts talking to me about it. I'm like, "Well, really, this is what happened." He asked me this question. No one can answer it. It's rhetorical. And she said, "I can answer this." "Oh, really? Who are you?" Being all facetious.
Mm-hmm.
She freaking told me. And it scared me to the core because I'm like, how in the world do you know what makes you you? It's not just your name. It's not just your titles. It's everything authentic that makes you you. And I didn't have that. And it spooked me.
Right.
So I'd go back to Arlen and be like, "Hey, oops.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Let's talk.
Who asked you that question? Who are you?"
I've had in federal prison. I went to federal prison when I was 19 for about 5.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was out there, I was just causing problems after problem. I could not stay out of trouble, even in prison. Like, it was not, that was everyday life. And I remember I went to see a psychiatrist to try and get on some pills so I could, feel better. Right. I wasn't trying to take him to help anything. I just wanted, what could I get? What could I lie?
I
get the Seroquel. How can I numb it out here?
Yep.
I don't have money to buy the drugs that are on the yard. So that was my manipulation tactic, and I went in there and we had this conversation, and the whole time I was just, lying about everything, making up this, and I have seizures and I do this and I need this right now. And I remember he looked at me and he was like, "Do you know who you are?" And then, and when he said that, I didn't think of it as in-depth question. I thought of, I'm Tyson Steed. I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, and this is who I am. Is that a problem? It was defensive, right? It was that convict mentality. It wasn't like listening to what he said, but I do remember the days that followed is thinking about that. And I was like, man, that's a really good question. I don't have a clue. I don't know. I don't even know what I like anymore.
Scary.
Yeah. And so that was the first time that I'd been directly asked that question. And it was terrifying, man. It was uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
I didn't love it.
And the process of becoming is starting to understand that and learn that. And I think listening to you speak, I can absolutely feel like the strength that you have pulled from literally doing what we say, turning your mess of addiction into your message of sobriety. It's what you're doing now. We call it the erase and replace philosophy. It's what you're doing. And that's the becoming part. So, now you are an athlete and you are an employee and you are a partner and you are a teammate and you're all these other, like aspects. And you're an addict, but it's part of you. It's not who you are. And we start seeing that through those lenses. You're like, man, there's so much more to me than this. Right. So what's on the horizon for you, man? What's next as we kind of keep life going at life's terms? What's on your, on your radar?
So we're in college right now. I'm in my second year.
Sweet.
Going into social work.
Dude.
I'm going to be a therapist.
Let's go.
Get that LCSW.
Absolutely.
My sister graduated, I think 3 years ago with her master's. Ashley is in her master program right now. She'll be done.
I met her.
She'll be done next August.
So awesome.
And I'm going to follow in their footsteps. And we're going to start. My sister just started her own clinic, Renewed Roots. Shout out to Renewed Roots.
Beautiful.
Super cool.
Where's the location at?
She'll be in Riverdale.
Okay.
She'll start in Riverdale. And I believe as Ashley finishes up, she'll probably go there as well. We'll have to get more offices. And
well, let's get in contact because my private practice is full and I need people I can refer to. So I'd love to know more.
Down. She's the coolest, man. And
That's awesome.
what's a lot of what drove her into that is, our childhood.
Yeah.
And she always, at one point I remember saying, I'm going to be a federal parole or probation officer or this and that. And I'm like, oh, I've messed up that bad. Where you trying to figure out what's going on in my head? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we go back, we used to, beef really tough. We were those siblings that fought all the time. And now we're just as close as can be.
Cool, man. Like, again, same mold. You, the youngest, having two older sisters. I have an older brother, two middle sisters, and then me. My older brother moved out when I was little. So kind of were raised by a single mom, divorced in and out of divorces, married, divorced like 6-7 times. It was nuts. And so I feel very connected to that. That sounds kind of funny, but to that female part, because single mom and two sisters, I watched a lot of hell they were put through.
Oh yeah.
And so I think there's a unique bond with a younger brother with two older sisters. Does that make sense? Like there's some
Absolutely.
kind of interesting awareness there. So that is awesome, man. And I love the fact that she didn't waste her talent going that direction and
Yeah.
decided to heal from within. Because,
Correct.
and you know, I'll probably get chewed out for this, but I don't care. You and me are on the same page. I remember I was working at a treatment center for youth. And I was talking this kid off of a ledge. The kid was trying to actively harm himself. He wanted lights out.
Mhm.
I spent like 6 hours with him, man. Finally got him to a place where he's like, okay, I'm okay. And dude, it was nuts, man. And I just remember feeling like that was insane. That was worse than any marathon, anything, because it's so mentally, emotionally draining. I go walking into the gas station after I left. I'm like, I need a drink, right? So I go get my Coke. And there's a bunch of firefighters and a cop in there. I'm like, oh, sweet. And as they walked up, the clerk's like, nah, no pay. Go right ahead, guys. And they just left. Hey, thank you. The heroes.
Mhm.
And I went up there and I'm like, slid my $1.50 across the table. I'm like, dude, like that is weird. Like,
Right.
do you have any idea what and I'm not saying like, give me my free drink, but I thought
Right.
it is weird kind of how we view that, because I think like the people that are in the front lines of mental health and addiction recovery, the ones that are spending the time, they're heroes, man.
They are
And
absolutely.
you'll never get the free drink or whatever because you don't
Right.
wear the uniform. But like, you got me thinking, how many other people in this convenience store deserve a free drink because they did something heroic today? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Staying sober, push through their depression, ended a relationship that was abusive. I mean, there's probably thousands of us walking around, but it really put it into perspective of like, wow, like how we idolize some of these folks. So anyone that goes into mental health and treatment and therapy, mind blowing, because we need
Kudos.
guys like us
Yes.
who not just walk the walk, but really have the ability to like see the deeper side of things. So, dude, anything I can do to support you, let me know.
Thank you.
It's freaking awesome.
It's just a blessing, and I've growing up in the system, I've always, if I could have connected to a therapist that was like, no, guys, check this out. I've been to prison. I've been to jail.
Seriously.
I've been doing this.
Yeah.
I've been all around. I know exactly where you're at right now.
Mhm.
Let's get to it. What do you want to talk about? You want to
Yeah.
work on some things, or you want, we can do it or we can't, but one way or the
Yeah.
other, you're going to put the work in and I'm going to guide you. So,
Do you know what's even more beautiful than that too? Is when they don't know that about you,
right.
but you just get it and they're like, what is up with this? I call it that, the therapeutic mojo, right? You just got it. And they're kind of like, wow, what is this? And it's just like you and I are talking today. Like, dude, we literally met like the darkest part of like the softball tournament. And I'm
Right.
like, dude, you have an amazing story. We got to get this out. But I feel so connected to you because like our hearts are in the same rhythm,
Correct.
because you've experienced the same things, different outcomes. But like, if we could do that with so many other people and like you said, make those connections a little deeper, can you imagine what we could do?
Man, we would have such a solid community.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
what it's all
yeah.
about.
That's what it's all about.
It is in the focus of these politics and politicians and everything going on. Like all that's
Mhm.
irrelevant to me in the sense of
I'm with you.
I need to help my community.
We start here.
I can't save the
Mhm.
world tomorrow, but what I can do is start locally with my people, with a nonprofit, with helping other nonprofits, with
Yep.
connecting, making connections. And man, that's all I want to do.
It's like this, and I'll leave you with I told you, we're going to go for 45 minutes. It's an hour and 2 minutes, but I'm like, I could probably talk to you for another hour.
Absolutely.
But the cool part about this is what I think, and I'll leave you with this, is that, I once heard this, that each of us, you, me, Ashley, sisters, everybody, we have the capacity and the ability to change 70,000 lives simply by being who we are. So think about that. Like one interaction you have is going to bleed into other reactions and connections and all this kind of stuff. Each of us have the potential to change 70,000 lives. At that rate, it would only take 8,000 people to change the world.
Right.
So I think we are stepping up to that plate. And so, I love it when I get to talk to guys like you in situations like this, because it's like, it makes it look not so dreary that there's help out there,
Right.
because you're going to be part of that frontline battle of really helping people rise to their occasion.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited for you,
the
man.
dream.
So I think this is a cool thing too, is, like-minded programs, Ashley, the Ashley Michelle Project, Addict to Athlete, like we've got to do some stuff in the future, because I think there's a lot of good that can happen when we collaborate. So So
Absolutely.
I'm excited
Connection,
to,
man. Let's
to be
connect
parts of that.
for sure.
Listeners, you've absolutely been well fed. How do people find at the Ashley Michelle Project? What do you website?
Online, AshleyMichelleProject.com or
Okay.
.org. I'm not sure. Facebook, social media. Yeah, check
Excellent.
it out. We'll be out there.
Yeah, we'll put links to this in the show notes. Make sure you go check them out, you guys. Davis County chapter of Addict to Athlete. Let's get you guys in touch so that you guys can kind of, maybe build some bridges there. But athletes, you've been well fed. It's so happy to have you all down here and listening to this podcast. And continue to share this with anyone who struggles with mental health or addiction. The goal here is for you to erase that addiction by replacing it with things of greater value, and to really turn your mess into your message. Perfect, brother. I'm all like,
Yeah, that's awesome.